Welcome to this episode of the Good, the Bad, and the Odd Kingology. This is our fifth one, my fifth one in this chronological series. So it's fifth published book, Stephen King's fifth published book, and I'm including the Batman books in that. Published in 1978. This contains quite a lot of famous Stephen King short stories. Some of them were unpublished, some of them were from various published short stories he'd done for men's magazines, but they were gathered in one place. It was published on the heels of The Shining, really, and I have to say, some of the original stories are some of my favourites on this. I'll mention them as I go. Okay. For this, there's 20 stories in this collection. There's also a lot of these stories inspired movies, and I tried to watch a reasonable amount of them. I think I covered 6 or 7 in the end, which isn't bad. There are more, but apart from one, which was The Mangler, I did watch all the ones that were released in cinemas, and I watched a few that went straight to TV or DVD, whichever was appropriate. But I didn't get around to them all. Some of them were like, I think, student works based on the Stephen King's dollar deal, where he allows certain people to make a version of his movie for a nominal fee of $1, just because I think he likes encouraging filmmakers. Anyway, let's get on to each of these. There's quite a few to get through. The first one was Jerusalem Lot, which I actually discussed a little back in about 3 months ago when I talked to Mike from Chinstroker vs. Punter. We went through Salem's Lot. This is kind of a prequel story to Salem's Lot. It's Jerusalem's Lot. However, it's not about vampires or anything like that. It's more of a homage to H.P. Lovecraft. And I'd say it's as good as any piece of middle tier Lovecraft. It's a really strong, good story. It's unpublished as well as one of his unpublished works in this collection. And I do think if you found this among H.P. Lovecraft's own work, you'd think it was just one of his better pieces of writing. King is a slightly better writer than H.P. Lovecraft. That's not to say I think badly of H.P. Lovecraft. I think H.P. Lovecraft writing is quite phenomenal and a thing of beauty, and stands alone as quite distinct and unique. He certainly isn't as repetitive as Lovecraft. Lovecraft might use the word something like tenebrous or eldritch 3 or 4 times in a piece of text. King would uses those kinds of words much more sparingly. And if you like Lovecraft, I'm sure you'll like this. And if you like this, you might want to try Lovecraft. I think it'd be fine even if you never read any Lovecraft. It's slightly more accessible and more dynamic than Lovecraft. Lovecraft tends to be quite static. However, it does function as a prequel to Salem's Lot because it's set in the same town, Jerusalem's Lot, but over 100 years before. Vampires are small fry compared to what's going on in this book. This is more a cosmic horror book. It's a fairly long story written in the first person epistolary style, but it's definitely worth a read. I really enjoyed this one. Probably my second favourite, actually. And if you want to hear more about Jerusalem's Lot and Salem's Lot, go back and listen to our podcast from 3 months ago. It's quite an entertaining one, even if I do say so myself. Second story was one called Graveyard Shift. This is a fun little story about rats in a fabric mill, and it really does play on the fear of rats, and having to crawl into dirty, disgusting places as well. It's kind of, which is really horrible if you've ever done it. And I think those two things can be kind of considered universal fears. In fact, I think the rats in this story kind of are very similar to the rats that come out in the dump story of Salem's Lot. Sorry to go on about Salem's Lot, but it's true. There's sequences with rats in that don't precipitate into anything. But in that particular book, but in this, they really do precipitate into something. They really do. This is much more of. It's not a story about terror, really. It's more horror and gross out. Than say terror and suspense, and on that level it works really well. It really does. is a sweaty, horrible kind of story, and it works well in that sort of level of horror and physical repulsion. Now, there was a film of this. I'm going to play a trailer now.
Stephen King invites you to venture deep inside the caverns below the old Bachman Mill.
You're not thinking about going down in there?
Where a secret lies long forgotten by any living soul.
Just ain't no job worth this.
The workers suspected.
You can't put me down there. You can't put anybody down there. I know things.
The owner denies it.
What did happen to the fellow that started this job?
It didn't work out.
And everyone fears it.
This place is infested.
That might be the understatement of the year.
Broken? Because one by one, it will devour them all.
We're like shrimp in an all-you-can-eat salad bar, and that thing ain't stopping till it's full.
Must be some other way out of here.
It's blocked!
This isn't real.
This is the new horror from the mind of Stephen King. Graveyard Shift. Good benefits, early retirement.
Okay, so Graveyard Shift. It wasn't a great monster film, and the characters aren't very likeable, memorable even. Some of the acting's a bit wonky, some of the lighting direction's a bit pedestrian. The lighting seems way too bright when they're in dark places. And the creature itself that they finally meet, it varies a little from the written story. Anyway, the creature itself isn't that scary, but it's a good monster design. The main foreman, to me, comes across as a sort of cut-price Clancy Brown. Now, I really like Clancy Brown. I think quite a while ago I did an Odd One Out podcast about Pet Sematary and Pet Sematary 2, the movies. Clancy Brown was in Pet Sematary 2, and I really liked him in it. And the guy in this reminded me kind of a bit like that. So just to be reminded that is not a bad thing. And it has a very odd accent. At first I thought it was trying to for Cajun, but the more I listened, it kind of I think he was trying to do a strong Maine accent, but I'm really not sure. I really don't know. New York kept slipping in, but I still don't know what accent he was actually trying to go for. And the creature effects were fine, I think. They were very gooey. There was a lot of dripping and greasy looking things. One thing I did like about it was Brad Dourif was in it as this manic exterminator. It comes across as a sort of Quint from Jaws version of Rats, which was a lot of fun. Overall, wasn't a great movie. I'm glad I watched it. I was walled off of watching any of these, but I'm a film buff, so I am going to watch the films I want to watch, and I'm glad I did. Actually, I don't regret. Apart from one, which I felt was a complete waste of time to watch. I don't regret any of these. Graveyard Shift was fine. I hope you got a taste of it from the trailer. The third story was a story called Night Surf. Now, this is this kind of a vignette side story to The Stand, actually. The World of the Stand. Certainly, Captain Trips is mentioned in the various flues. And it's about bored, young, they're not quite teenagers, they're a bit older for teenage, but they're young men and women drifting in the world where a lot of people have died. Now, they had a different variant of the flu before the main flu hit, so I think they're immune, and they're drifting around this world, and it's a very melancholy, ennui-ridden sort of worldview. They seem to be kind of drifting for an empty world waiting to die, and there's also hints of how superstition's starting to grow in their minds of how to attack it, and they say it's a bit of a joke, but they do quite horrible things. It was decent enough, a bit throwaway, something to read if you're reading The Stand, and we will be doing The Stand next month, so I might comment on this again and reread after I've read The Stand. But it was all right. It was throwaway, but it was okay. Number 4 of the 20 was I Am a Doorway. Now, this is King going back to cosmic horror again and madness, and it's got a touch of the Quatermass, it's got a touch of the H.P. Lovecraft again, but this time it's not written in Lovecraft's kind of style, except maybe in a few places. It's much more King's own way of writing, and works fine. It's enjoyable. It's not that memorable, but it's kind of decent. There is like a horror. A kind of, when you think about what the guy in the story is going through or thinks he's going through, it's never quite clear if he's just mad or it's actually happening. Though I think near the end it kind of does become clearer. Though it could never really happen in real life. It's kind of got that gooey body horror feel to it. It was, like I say, not as memorable, but decent. Number 5 of the 20 is The Mangler. Now, this, I don't know, the idea of a possessed folding machine sounds laughable, but if you've ever worked in a factory or a laundry, and I've done both of those things, the big mechanical devices are kind of frightening. It's basically because it's so easy to get horribly injured if you're careless or if you have bad luck. Basically, arms and fingers and whatever do not stand up well against fast-running belts, metal gears grinding together, steam, the sort of things you find in these places. I've lost a family member to a boiler explosion, so I kind of understand that on that level too. And I like how the protagonists in this don't kind of go around the houses trying to figure out what's going on. They basically believe something supernatural's going on. They just try and figure out how they're going to take action against this thing. I kind of like this one, but the ending, the very, very last part, is kind of ridiculous. I don't know, if you haven't read it, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's kind of ridiculous. There was a film made of this, by the way, with Robert Englund, and I just couldn't track down a copy. The only copies I could track down were, it's not on Netflix or any streaming or YouTube or anything like that. The only copies I could find were like £20 ordered from America, and I'm not going to pay £20 just to watch a film I'm probably not going to like or see again. The reviews of it make it sound quite bad as well. I don't mind watching a film I can get hold of it. I'll pay a few pounds, but not 20. So I haven't seen it. If anyone has seen it who wants to comment, drop us a line or send in a voicemail. Record something on your phone and email it to me on info@thegoodthebadandtheodd.com. I'm kind of interested to hear what other people think of it. But yeah, I wasn't prepared to spend too much just to see this particular film. I'm a completist, but not that much of a completist. Number 6 of the 20 is The Bogeyman. Or The Boogeyman, sorry. I was pronouncing it the English way, but we were King here, so we'll do it the American way. The Boogeyman. Decent enough story, I think, and it's basically using the urban legend, the primal fear about the boogeyman in the cupboard or under the bed or whatever. And it's sort of a man telling a psychiatrist about his family life, and there's something going on. I feel it had a good ambiguous streak. You were never quite sure if the monster was real or we were talking to someone who was mad. And unfortunately, that ambiguity, which I think worked quite well, was undercut really by an end bit. King just can't resist the final EC Comics kind of twist. But to me, it would have worked better if it had been left ambiguous. Didn't mind it, but I preferred it as an ambiguous story rather than a resolved story. Right, story 7 of 20 was Grey Matter. Now, we forget about high-minded sort of terror or anything sort of... I'm going to say suspenseful, because there is a lot of suspense in this, but this is much more of a suspense leading to horror and gross out kind of story, but it's done really well, really, really well. It's absolutely revolting what happens in this story. The slime's dripping off the quill. By the end of this, it's a slimy, wet, gooey story. and it does get into the brain and the gag reflex, it has to be said, and one that's kind of quite disgusting. I enjoyed this one. I thought it was quite kind of cool. I haven't got much more to say than that. I like this collection, it has to be said. I think this is my favourite. I've read several of these collections, and a few of them several times. And I think Skeleton Crew's a pretty solid set too, but I really like this collection. Anyway, let's get back on track. Story 8 of 20, Battleground. This is a very slight story of toy soldiers reanimating to take revenge against a professional hitman. I'm sure there's been something like the Twilight Zone story made of this. In fact, I looked it up and there was, but I can't remember the details. And it kind of goes in a predictable way from that initial premise. One thing I did like about it was specifically, it was a hitman who appears obviously a professional at surviving death, something that could be a deadly experience. So that kind of was a nice twist. Kind of a cool story. Alright, number 9 of 20 was Trucks. Now, this is about trucks and motor vehicles becoming self-aware and alive. Now, this is a concept that's been around a lot, and I think it was around before he wrote this story. I could be wrong. I certainly remember there was a TV movie called Killdozer, where a bulldozer came to life. That was from the early 70s. Now, let me see if I've got down when he actually wrote this. It was published in 1973, June 1973 originally. So that might be before Killdozer, and he almost certainly, even though when he wrote it, he probably had the idea before. But so maybe he did come up with it. It's been reused a lot of times. This idea, maybe of either cars being self-aware or motor vehicles being self-aware, or them being the agents of some, a faceless driver. For example, there's Duel, the famous TV movie Duel. Stephen King's own Christie, which came later. There's one about a demonic car called The Car and stuff like that. And I guess you could throw in things like Terminator movies if you expand it to technology, though they're Terminator movies are supernatural, of course. This one, I don't think it's supernatural, it's more sci-fi, actually. Basically, it involves a set of people being stuck in a diner, trucks communicating with them via Morse code, and it's an interesting premise. A couple of movies got derived from this, Maximum Overdrive and Trucks. I'll talk about both of those. And it was fairly memorable because its premise and this idea of mankind being enslaved by machines was kind of interesting. Liked it. It was a decent enough story. Now, I'm going to talk about the movies inspired. The first was Maximum Overdrive. Here's the trailer.
Hi, my name is Stephen King. I've written several motion pictures, but I want to tell you about a movie called Maximum Overdrive, which is the first one I've directed. Wow.
What in the dickens is going on around here?
A lot of people have directed Stephen King novels and stories. And I finally decided if you want something done right, you ought to do it yourself.
And who was driving it? I don't know.
Curtis! It's coming after us!
It was my first picture as a director. And you know something? I sort of enjoyed it. I just wanted someone to do Stephen King right.
You want a war? You got one.
I just want to get the hell out of here.
So come and spend some time with me and my friends at the Dixie Boy. Spend some time in the dark.
Please don't let us be in the dark.
Help me.
I'm gonna scare the hell out of you. And that's a promise.
You're going to get us in an awful lot of trouble, man.
We already in trouble.
Maximum terror.
Jesus coming and he is.
Maximum King.
Maybe tomorrow will be our world again.
Dino De Laurentiis presents Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive.
Now, also, when I looked for the trailer, I did find there's an HD version of this up on YouTube, so you can actually go into YouTube and watch this movie. I don't know if it's legit. I have no idea it was on YouTube. Who knows? Now, this film was made in '86. It was Stephen, as you heard from the trailer, it was Stephen King's own pet project. He directed this. A lot of people really hate this, and a lot of people like it. It's a lot of fun. It's ridiculously 80s. It's kind of ridiculous. It clunks along. There's lots of fun destruction right from the beginning. I've never seen a watermelon used in that kind of way before, for that sort of shock effect, but it was kind of fun. There's trucks exploding, buildings blowing up, garages blowing up, and I like the fact one of the main trucks appears to have the Green Goblin face on its grill, as you saw in the trailer behind Stephen King, actually. Apparently Stephen King was quite coked up when he directed this, and I think it helped. I think it's a way more entertaining film than it could be. It's very entertaining. The dialogue's kind of bad, and the scenes are not well planned out, but that's part of the fun. They got the hellishly good soundtrack. I don't know how Stephen King got AC/DC on the soundtrack to this, but it's fun, man. And I like the fact that the guy that runs the diner just happened to have things like rocket launchers to fight the trucks. Wow. Nice. Fun film. 6 out of 10 for me. Really quite enjoyed it. The second version of the story Trucks was actually, I think it was a TV movie. It was certainly a movie, but a TV movie made in 1997. Here's a trailer for that.
From the short story by Stephen King, Trimark Pictures invites you to buckle up. You are now entering a town called Lunar.
Morning.
First time in this part of the cosmos. Looking for flying saucers?
Why would anyone want to live in a place like this?
Dad, it's too quiet here.
Where something strange is going on.
Electricity is out for most areas. It'll be at least 24 hours before we can get to you.
Can't get nothing on the CB.
Phones are out.
What's that?
Is there anyone driving?
Trucks don't drive by themselves.
A mysterious force has taken hold.
These trucks appear to have an intelligence of talking to each other. They're up to something.
And the traffic is way out of control.
Look out! That man's boys outside. Look out!
Dad, what's going on?
Get away from my son! Now!
We got the generator.
I think we're gonna be next.
I'll get you out of here, I promise.
Go, go, go!
You are about to reach the end of the line. Trucks. A thriller without brakes. Starring Timothy Busfield.
Now, the trailer makes it sound reasonably okay, but actually it's pretty bad. It was kind of, imagine Maximum Overdrive without any of the crazy. There's no rocket launchers, no AC/DC, there's no... I've forgotten in the Maximum Overdrive there were some quite cool musical cues that were kind of psycho-ish. There's none of that in this one. There's not particularly much car carnage. It plays as a serious piece of drama, and it's pretty poor. There was one guy who I thought was decent. He was playing this Air Force fella on vacation with his daughter. He reminded me of Liev Schreiber, actually, but this is the one film out of all the ones I watched in this set that I'd say just do not bother with. It's a waste of time. I'll give it 2 out of 10. Right, next we get to story 10, which was Sometimes They Come Back. This is a really well-written story about a teacher, King's always go-to profession, who has an incident in his past where his brother died, which haunts him quite badly. And there's this growing sort of dread throughout the story And it grows and grows and grows in intensity, and it's all through the main character. And King makes us really feel it. It's a really good piece of writing. It's one of his best pieces of writing in the set, actually. It's not my favourite, but it's certainly one of his better pieces of writing. I really enjoyed this. And the ending was a bit odd, but I went with it. It was fine. And this spawned a movie too with Tim Matheson, actually, which it purportedly is a TV movie, but I think it was good enough to be in the cinemas myself watching it. Another point is I did find the complete movie and a few of its sequel on YouTube. So this movie is on YouTube. It looked like a terrible print, but there might be better ones on there. Funny enough, I didn't say it, but the Maximum Overdrive appeared to be in HD, so it was a really good print. Lord knows how long. There's a note at the bottom of where the guy that posted this says, I don't know how long this will be up, but it was 10 months old and it was still up, so I think it's there for the long run. Anyway, so sometimes they come back to the movie. It was rather a good adaptation. They actually converted several of the story elements, which I thought were a bit dodgy, into a more coherent story. So it actually improved on the storyline by making it more movie-ish, by sort of streamlining some of the elements to make it more sensible. Tim Matheson, as I say, is the lead in this, and he really looks like Bruce Willis in a big wig. And he's a decent enough actor. He gives a good central performance. The script's pretty good. But as I say, there was a number of structural changes that actually improve the story. And it gives it more emotional impact. Certainly the end is quite different. And also makes what motivates the weird gang and how they suddenly appear at this time also kind of makes sense. I like this one. It was a good film. 6 out of 10 I'll give it. Right, story 11 of this set was Strawberry Spring. It's basically a first person story of a guy that's on a campus where there's murders happening during what was called a strawberry spring, a warm spring. I saw the twist pretty early on this, but it was fine. I liked the final delivery. It was kind of almost reading about Jack the Ripper on campus. That's kind of how it felt. Reasonable enough. I'll go to the next one, though. Story 12 of 20 was The Ledge. This isn't a supernatural story. There's no demons. There's no supernatural elements at all. It's basically a guy being forced into a really dangerous, terrible situation by circumstances. It's a guy who's started carrying on with a gangster's wife. Never a great idea. And they're being forced to do something where he could wind up dead. He has to go out on a ledge and walk around the ledge on a very, very high building, a windy, cold building. It reminded me a bit of some of the Roald Dahl stories, from Tales of the Unexpected. It was that kind of vibe. I kind of like this one, and it's been... it was done in the film Cat's Eye, which I'll come on to in a bit later on, because there's 2 stories from this set that come from that film, and I want to talk about it with the second story. But it definitely reminded me of some Roald Dahl stories. It reminded me particularly of the Roald Dahl story where the guy is betting that his lighter will work 10 times in a row and he'll lose his finger if he doesn't. It kind of reminded me of that. It was a decent sweaty gangster story, essentially. I liked it. Story 13 of 20 was The Lawnmower Man. This is a very bizarre story. Probably one of the most bizarrest of this collection, though Grey Matter's pretty bizarre as well. Basically, a guy wants his lawn mown and ends up dealing with sort of an ancient demigod type thing. Really odd. Kind of enjoyable and memorable because it's so odd, but and it's almost, I think it's comedy really rather than horror. But the title alone spawned the film The Lawnmower Man, which, let's listen to the trailer.
Job Smith is the Lawnmower Man. A man.
Joe, come on, boy, let's go. Grass is waiting for you.
With the mind of a child.
Yeah, Cybo Man. He came to see me.
Cybo Man. Comics, right?
Yeah, Cybo Man.
And a doctor.
Virtual reality holds a key to the evolution of the human mind.
With a vision of the future.
I have a game in my house that you might like to play. Would you like that?
Yeah. Okay. That was really bad.
I have different games. I even have one that could help make you smarter.
Now, Job Smith is about to enter the world of virtual reality.
It's gonna hit me! No, Joe, just relax. It's gonna be like being up there with the stars, Joe. They're going to another planet. His mind is like a clean, hungry sponge. I just graduated to the next level, Joe.
You're not the lawnmower man.
Well, you've certainly changed. I don't know how you did it, but I approve.
I absorbed Latin yesterday in less than 2 hours.
Joe, where are you? Joe.
A world where the normal course of events can suddenly turn inside out.
You realize, Dr. Angelo, that my intelligence has surpassed yours.
The imaginary becomes real.
Trying to get inside my head, Joe.
You can't hide anything from me, Dr. Angelo.
And reality.
We have no idea what he's gonna do.
Is all in your mind. The Lawnmower Man.
Yeah, right. So, Lawnmower Man. My cliff notes on this is I just put a laugh, ha ha ha. It's dumb. It's a really terrible film in terms of trying to be serious business. I actually paid money and saw this at the cinema. Jeff Fahey's in it, who's like this sort of man-child. He's obviously sort of got mental impairment problems, but he ends up looking like Harry from Dumb and Dumber. They've got the same haircut and the same brain power. We get a weird sadistic priest who whips him. We get nymphomaniac widows. We get a wife-child beater. We get Pierce Brosnan looking like a really skinny with a big gold earring, spouting the most terrible pseudo-scientific gibberish I've ever heard. You heard some of it on the trailer, but when he says things like, he learnt the Latin alphabet in 2 hours, it took me a year. And you think, the Latin alphabet's the one we use now. Maybe without a J or a W, it took you a year to learn an alphabet. You know, it just doesn't make sense. Some of the CGI looks decent, some of it looks really bad. And it's got Jeffrey Lewis in it. I like Jeffrey Lewis. I was in Salem's Lot, actually, the TV version of Salem's Lot. However, I was very entertained by watching this movie, so I enjoyed it a lot. 6 out of 10 for me. Nothing to do with the story at all. Stephen King sued to get his name taken off, and I don't blame him. It's nothing to do. They just wanted his name on something and put on a completely different story on. And made the main guy Gardener so they could call it a Lawnmower Man. Yeah. Okay. Story 14 of the 20 is Critters Inc. This is like The Ledge. There's no supernatural or otherworldly kind of thing, but it's basically a sweaty look at a man forced to do something against his will again. It's like The Ledge. And it's a nifty story, this. Moves along nicely. It's a comically dark kind of story. And King throws in lots of little statements that sort of twist, you know. So he injects in these sentences. They've got a lot of like body horror or horror about what will happen to this guy's family if he takes up smoking again, and it's kind of fun in that sense. However, this one, Critters and The Ledge, were used in an anthology movie called Cat's Eye. There was actually 3 stories in this. The two I've mentioned, and a third one which was written just for the film. So it was nice to see film versions of these stories. Now, The Critters Inc. was the first one in this anthology. Oh, sorry, let's listen to the trailer.
Stephen King, your favorite novelist and master of modern horror, has written his first motion picture screenplay. It combines all the elements of his creative imagination. Lovable pets, classic cars, quiet evenings, favorite films.
Kill the son of it.
Good idea.
Adorable kids.
Help me! It's after me!
And of course, a monster or two. Experience a series of electrifying adventures as seen through Stephen King's Cat's Eye.
Where's your sense of humor?
Stephen King's Cat's Eye.
I like this anthology. Queers Inc. was the first one used, and it's played as like comedy actually. It's got James Woods in it, gives a great performance. And it's kind of, he knows these gangsters are watching him. I did laugh out loud when he was at a party full of smokers looking around, and suddenly every breath you take comes on the soundtrack. It was kind of funny. It's kind of a bit dodgy that they were talking about torturing a man's wife for comic effect, but yeah, it's the 80s. I liked it. The Ledge was the second story, and it was a really good version of this. Robert Hayes from Airplane was the guy that falls down the ledge, the sort of Asian tennis pro, and it's good casting for that. And then there was I enjoyed that story as well. Both of those were really solid versions. And then there was a final original segment called General, which involved the cat that was wandering around in the first two stories, which was alright. It was a bit silly. It kind of reminded me of the final segment of Trilogy of Terror, you know, a small, or Gremlins or something like that. And the effects were really good, actually. The goblin that was trying to steal the little girl's breath, that's what it was about, and the cat trying to stop it, the effects were really good, but the story was a bit silly, really. I did enjoy seeing James Norton, who he hasn't been in much. He's an actor that was actually in the Planet of the Apes TV show. He played, I think the character name was Burke. And I liked him in that Planet of the Apes show, and he was the father in this, and he was kind of cool. There's also references throughout this film to other Stephen King work. There's like Christine, Cujo, Dead Zone, Pet Sematary. There was probably more. I mean, Drew Barrymore was the little girl in this, and she'd already been in the movie Firestarter at this point, I think. In fact, I think this was directed by the same guy that directed Firestarter. I could be wrong, but I think it was. And it was kind of cool. A good set of movies here. 7 out of 10. Solid. Right, now we get to story 15. I Know What You Need. This is a stalker story, really, but a really, really long-term stalker. And it's got a supernatural element, but it's not that memorable. I thought the resolution was a little curt, actually. It could have been gone for a little more. There was loads of build-up and quite a short resolution. But, you know, it could be, I'm sure some people would like this. The way it ended, it was more of a gut punch than anything drawn out. It was fine though, fine as a story. And that brings us to 16, Children of the Corn. We've seen this story elsewhere. The original Wicker Man kind of had it. There was a Spanish, I think it was a Spanish movie called Who Could Kill a Child that really was very similar in tone and content to this. But it's a rather good story. Though King's, when I read it again, I've read this story before, I remember the focus of the story being kind of different. But that's me. But I do think the focus of the story is not what you'd expect from King in this kind of story, but it's kind of interesting from that respect. And to me, it is a story that does suggest a film or a whole mythology, in fact. You know, and creepy kids are pretty creepy. So that always helps in kind of how it starts. I like the story well enough. It inspired a whole set of films, which I'm only going to talk about the first one here. Here's a trailer for the first one.
Every child is afraid of the dark, the unknown, the nightmare. In Gatlin, Nebraska, that nightmare is in the corn. Stephen King's Children of the Corn.
Praise God! Praise the Lord!
From Stephen King, the author of Carrie, The Shining, The Dead Zone and Christine, an adult nightmare. Children of the Corps.
I'm here, Lord! I'm
ready! Stephen King's Children of the Corps, an adult nightmare.
This film was made in 1984. But despite a rather good premise, this really was quite a dull film. It wasn't particularly scary. It almost felt like a Disney version of a horror movie, but there was some quite graphic blood and gore, though the rest of it was played in terms of the acting and the way of the dialogue. It felt more like a Disney movie. There's cute kids, there's big bullying, ugly kids throwing his weight around. Linda Hamilton starred in this as the young wife in distress. She, went on to Terminator, and she was really good. She had obvious star quality and charisma that really came through. And the story actually, while I've sort of criticised it quite a bit, the third act actually is pretty good. There's lots of excitement, exciting things going on. And I can kind of see how, I think it's had like 6 sequels and a TV remake, which I didn't get to at all. Wasn't that interested in pursuing that. And this film was okay. It was reasonably entertaining. Don't regret watching it, but I'd give it 5 out of 10. Alright, that brings us to 17 of 20. That's the last rung on the ladder. Now, I read this collection before. This is probably my 3rd or 4th time of reading it. And so far, going through it this time, I remember them all fairly distinctly once I got into the stories. But this one, I have absolutely no memory of reading before. And this surprises me. Because it's very simply written and it's a very moving piece of writing, I think. It's my favourite, this work. Easily my favourite. I think it's a really beautifully constructed piece of writing. It's touching. It's got a nice simplicity to it. You certainly feel it. It reminds me of the best bits of King's other work. It, Pet Sematary, Shawshank, The Body, Green Mile. Those sort of bits where he touches on sorrow. And this story really does that. I really enjoyed this story. I think it's in my top 5 of short stories ever, and it's in there with, some of the best Sherlock Holmes stories and things like that. That's what I'm thinking of when I think of short stories. It really got to me, this one. I was wondering if it's something to do with age. It's one of those stories that you feel more when you're a little older and you understand the protagonist a bit better. I don't know, but I literally cannot remember it at all, which is really odd. But I thought it was really a lovely piece of writing. Anyway, let's get on to number 18 of 20. The Man Who Loved Flowers. This is a this is an EC Comics type of story, right? Nice, cute, happy build-up and a horrible, violent twist. But it is fun in that respect. It would work better as a short comic book story, frankly. It was well written, but then King stuff tends to be well written. So there you go. Story 19 of 20 is One for the Road. This is a sequel to Salem's Lot, actually. It functions as a short sequel about a wife and child being lost in a blizzard in the vicinity of Salem's Lot, and it talks about it being burnt out and left alone for at least 2 years. So this is 2 years after the events at the end of the book Salem's Lot. I definitely recommend this one if you've just finished Salem's Lot. But then I'd also recommend In Jerusalem's Lot from this set of stories before you read Salem's Lot. Though that has way less to do with vampires than this one. It's a good story, and I also, as I said with the other, with Jerusalem's Lot, I actually discussed this a little in our Salem's Lot podcast, so there's a mention there. Finally, we get to that was 19. We get to the last one, 20. The Woman in the Room. Now, like Last Rung on the Ladder, this is about more real life horror and dread than anything otherworldly or supernatural, and the sort of horror we may actually face as human beings at some point in our life. However, this one left me cold. It didn't really engage me. It was well written, but it just didn't touch me. I kind of could see where it was going and stuff like that. And it could be because I was at the end of like watching all these movies and reading all these stories. I was a bit fagged out. I don't know. I might be giving it short shrift, really, but it just didn't get to be that much. And again, it was the other one story that I just had no memory of as well. But it was interesting that both the ones that are dealing with a more human aspect were ones I couldn't remember. It's just this one really didn't affect me. I am surprised. I'm sure I should have remembered Last Rung on the Ladder because I really enjoyed it. But who knows? Anyway, so that's that set. 20 stories and several films. Great collection of stories, I think. There's only maybe one or two duds in there, and there's some. I'd say there was 5 really good ones in here, and the rest of them are very decent. It's a very solid, consistent collection, and I'd recommend it. Next time, I'll be covering The Stand. Now, I hope you can appreciate that's a biggie, so it might take me 2 months to get through. I was originally, when I planned this, I think I'd already said The Stand's going to be a 2 month, and it's probably a 2 month, but I'm going to see what I'll do. If I manage to get it all in a month, and I want to watch the TV miniseries, I will talk about it in a month. Otherwise, it'll be 2 months. I also wanted to mention, I think I've mentioned it in other Kingologies, there is another quite solid King podcast that you can listen to called Castle Rock. I think it's Castle Rock Radio. Anyway, if you Google Castle Rock podcast, you'll find it. They've done a number of King works, and it's really worth listening to. Really enjoyable. So go and listen to them too. And that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Kingology, and next time it'll be number 6, The Stand.